So the first question proper is from Chad Kemp. With WrestleMania coming to Philly in 2024, I would expect a ceremony heavy on ECW talent. Based on all the podcasts I've heard with Shane, I'm 99.9% sure I know the answer, but if WWE calls, would he accept an induction invitation? My other question is regarding talent inducted, but I'll save that for now. But one, would you take a Hall of Fame induction?
It would depend. I've always said that Dominic's not there, and Koloff, and some of the giants that like the shoulders that I stood on, that just is perplexing to me. Now that it's not Vince McMahon saying, "James, we're gonna pluck you and put you in there, and Keith will put you in there," I'd be curious to see what the process is. And I've always maintained, even in my my argument that I have no desire to go in, if it was turned over to the fans, or if it was turned over to the current inductees in the Hall of Fame, or a combination of that, I'd be honored to be in the Hall of Fame. Because right now, and up until this year, I guess this year might be a little different. It's always been Vince McMahon sitting back and going, I decree this person's in the Hall of Fame and that person's in the Hall of Fame. I've mentioned it quite often, I think, because it's very striking. And, there's certain ways that you get these few and far between chances to look into the soul of somebody, right? And get really what they're thinking. And when I was there in 95, and how many times Vince would invoke ECW to me, but never using the letters ECW. It was always the Blood and Guts Company, the Small Pond, the Bingo Hall Company, and the minor leagues, and all this other backhanded euphemisms in it. So, they're part due of ECW as much as that failed and should have. Augmented the original ECW legacy. I've heard that either Paul Heyman or Paul Heyman as the booker for ECW as a collective going in. I think it certainly deserves it. I think Paul certainly deserves it. But I feel that, for my friends, and I've had this discussion with all of them, Sandman and Charlie, Scorpio, Tommy, Franny, Hack, Sabu, all of these guys, where my mentality sits on this. My mentality sits that ECW was so strikingly different and had transformed the industry for that brief 7 years that it's certainly worthy of more than a footnote in the Hall of Fame. That deserves its own opportunity to stand there front and center. I also think that every one of those people I just mentioned deserves to stand at that podium at some point in their career. So I personally would not be part of an induction of ECW as like this sort of, A/B, subset one down in the basement over here is ECW. I stand behind the product that company produced over the 7 years and in the way that it rocked wrestling and is still revered today because of it. That each of those entities, ECW included, Paul included, and all the other people I mentioned, their right to stand there and be accepted into that Hall of Fame as standalone. But until I think that even with that, if that is what TKO, Endeavor, Dana White, Emmanuel, whatever, if that's the way they're planning on doing it, I feel very strongly that it would be disrespectful to my trainer that gave me this career. You and I would have never met. None of these fans would even know who the hell I am if not for Dominic. And guys like Ivan Koloff, and the guys that I really hold on high pedestals and respect the world out of because of what they accomplished, but also the way they carried themselves as human beings and men, that it would be disrespectful for me to say, yeah, put me in there. I deserve to be there before the Pete Rose of wrestling and, Ivan Koloff's prodigious contribution to the industry and slews of others. I really do have zero interest in it. And the reason being, to me, that seems like more like a posthumous thing. Like, hey, he's been dead for 10 years. Let's put him in now. But I made so little of my career there. I was there for a cup of coffee when I was a kid breaking into the business to get some experience. I was there for a year and a half in a very uneventful, although there were plans to do other stuff, about a year and a half in 1991. And had to leave because of my dad. And then I went back in 95, and I often call it, and it still remains the worst 6 months of my entire 41-year career. So why would I want to sit in that Hall of Fame? these ain't my folks. To me, I that dirty, grungy bingo hall with sewage coming out of it. If I had any building I could pick one throughout my entire career to have performed in front of, it would have been that building, and that's the reason. So it's no disrespect to anybody else that's in that Hall of Fame. If each of us gets to make our own decisions, we're big boys and girls now, and if they decide that they would like to be in it, that's fine. But it would be like me suddenly going in as a Pittsburgh Steeler, being put in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Hall of Fame. Why? You're a Steeler. It's because I might have driven through Tampa Bay at one time or something. It just really is irrelevant to me. And until it becomes a real thing, like the football, baseball, all these other sports, basketball, golf, they all have their own actual, real physical building that's a Hall of Fame. And the WWE Hall of Fame is somehow this imaginary thing that nobody thinks of until this time of year, and then they forget about until next year. It's an aberration. It's like the guy dying of thirst in the middle of the desert, and you see the oasis that's just a mirage. It's not real.
Chad Kemp also says, my question is to change up the process of actually, because Vince is gone, and there's a formula. He says the formula is, a main eventer, a woman, a minority of some description, a tag team or stable. So he says, to change up the process, what if they borrowed from the UFC formula and inducted individual matches as well, like Savage and Steamboat and Bret and Austin at WrestleMania 13 immediately jumped to mind. Thanks and keep up the amazing work. And P.S. Shane, I don't know if they ever reached out, but I know loads of fans would show up if you ever did Steel City Con in Monroeville. Thanks.
Great question and great epitaph to that. We have been working to contact. Strange how small the world can be at times. I was Christmas shopping over the season, and I ran into a kid who I didn't remember, but when he told me his father's name, I had been friends with his dad. And he rekindled my memory and saying, hey, I was just a little boy, but my dad used to always tell us he knew you, and then he saw you somewhere and you talked to him, you had a nice conversation with him. Well, he asked the same question. Why have you never been at Steel City? Well, I had been there, but like 25 years ago. And I said, well, I know that the guy that had previously owned it apparently had some hang up on Shane Douglas being there, which is sort of strange, being that I've represented Pittsburgh all those years. And he had recently sold it. So we've been reaching out to the guy, Chris and I, to make the contact and how he would like to pursue, he had told this kid that he was interested. This kid, I guess, talks with him every day. Mike Hedley's his name, the kid, that he speaks to him on Facebook and said that he was interested. So we're in this period of like trying to get information to Chris to get sent to him and waiting for feedback. So hopefully soon. Francine and I had never appeared there together, and it's been since 2005 that Franny and I appeared in Pittsburgh together. So I think the Steel City Con being it's not just a wrestling convention; it's in a pop culture convention. The ECW is so strong in Pittsburgh that I think there'd be a lot of fans at Steel City Con that would love to see us, and we'd love to see them. And the other thing, James, that we're working on that about, I think this would be a great place to hold something like that. One of the parts of that, because it's again the connection of ECW to Pittsburgh, and ECW's legend winds through Pittsburgh and interlaces with Pittsburgh quite often. So hopefully look forward to it. And if so, we'll see you there.